And we're back with another episode of Franchise My Business, the podcast for franchisors, hosted by franchisors. You know me, I'm your host, Kevin Oldham. If you're a regular listener, we appreciate you deeply. This is the early stages of season 2. And a gentleman that I've been asking a couple times to come on our show accepted our invitation. And so I'm super excited to introduce everybody to my new friend, Russ Jundt. He is the president. He is the founder of an organization called Conserva Irrigation. You can imagine they're helping keep lawns look really, really beautiful throughout the country. So without further ado, Russ, welcome.
Kevin, thanks so much for having me on. Season 2, I heard, is where it's at. That's why I wanted to hold off until the exciting season 2.
I will tell you, we are way better in season 2 than frankly, I'm glad. If you go look at last, a year ago recording, everything was completely different. So we've done the work and we've got the reps and we're nowhere near being done, but I definitely appreciate it. You have a ridiculous bio in franchising, and the show's called Franchise My Business. I think it's kind of cool, the fact that all of your franchise stuff is kind of falling outdoors. So why don't you just give us a quick journey through what it's like to be you as it relates to our industry that we love so much.
Yeah, you got it, man. Thanks for that. I love franchising. It's one of those things, man. It's like COVID, but better, right? You catch it and you're in it, man. And it's been crazy. My business partner and I, we started a company in the early, actually right at about 2000, and we owned an underground utility construction company. That's where we started working a few years later in the irrigation space, not by design, by accident. And we were doing a lot of phone, cable type work. We were doing fiber to home type projects, and that's when we actually started getting chased down our smaller crews to install irrigation systems. And the need was great back then in the early 2000s because nobody would show up. Contractors weren't showing up. And so we found ourselves back-ended into that space. And but we were dissatisfied in Minnesota and Minneapolis in particular. We love our water. And there wasn't a lot of business acumen. There certainly was, it's a very fragmented industry. And people certainly were not talking about water conservation. So as quickly as we got into it, we were only in maybe about 3, 4, maybe even 5 years before we departed. But at that time, we purchased our very first franchise, and it was called Mosquito Squad.
Oh, cool.
And it was not only first to market, it was creation of market, right? And that's where I met our CEO today at Empower Brands, Scott Zide. And so he was one of the co-founders of Mosquito Squad. And so 18 years ago we met. And I loved it. It was the first time we were not in business by ourselves, of course, because we had a great franchise team in and around us. And as franchisees started building up, it was even that much better. We could share best practices. In the underground utility construction world, I used to try to share best practices and talk about what are you getting per foot, and nobody would want to share that information. So to me, it was like this big warm hug of like, man. And what I coined even back then, coopetition, cooperating, collaborating, working together, but still competing and having fun around that side of it. And so 4 years in to Mosquito Squad, and at that time we bought out the rights to the state of Minnesota. We were expanding. We still own that company today in the Minneapolis area. Love it, great company. Oh, cool. But the reality is I caught that bug of franchising, and I went back to Tom and I said, you know what? My business partner, I said, Tom, we should buy another franchise. We should go back into another industry called irrigation. We should buy that franchise. And so sure enough, we went to the Google. There wasn't one. And that's where it started. So 9 months of tons of data, deep dive, went to the first Irrigation Association show that fall of was November of 2010. And was super excited to find out that the industry had started to evolve, right? The caveman was stepping upwards and talking about water conservation, right? Talking about a little bit of some neat stuff, right? That really intrigued me. Months later, founded the company, and then that following August, hit the ground running, a single static one-page website, a bunch of yard signs, and opened up our first shop. And in 90 days, we had 305 customers, Kevin, and I knew we were onto something.
That's amazing.
And it took off from there.
That's really cool. Yeah, I've been over here taking notes because selfishly, this show is awesome for me because I get a master class of people that have done things that I haven't done in my career. And there is one thing that I do that I think is hilarious, and I did a blog post about it last year. I said the number one marketing tactic for 2023, and it could have just been overall, is to show up, to answer the phone, to do what you say, just the basics, the blocking and tackling of business. Just show up, return a phone call.
That's awesome. That you
pretty good marketing tactic. It's free. It's unexpected. In a world where service is disappearing, it's like, oh my gosh, you're amazing. 5 stars. No, I just did what I was raised to do. Showed up, did the work. But then the other thing you did was you did guerrilla marketing. Like you kind of you took your minimal viable product. You didn't invest a ton. 1-page website. Let's do some signage. Because you knew that those were the drivers of what would work in this business, and it worked. So it was like scrappy.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's what it takes to get these things off the ground.
And every protocol that we've developed along the way is I want to say by accident. It's on purpose, but it's really discovered on accident. Mm-hmm. And I'll give you a perfect example of it. We do one of our great call to actions, one of our great customer acquisition tactics that we utilize is through the call to action, the 6 weeks of time where you got to winterize your system. Mother Nature says it is time. You got 6 weeks to act. You got to do it yourself. Most don't. You got to hire a professional. That's us, or you got to ignore it, which is catastrophic. So we have a call to action, right? So we get a chance to get in there, but most of our competitors, again, what they're doing in those days, right? That's very fragmented. These dudes and dudettes are showing up, shutting off the water, hooking up a compressor. They retreat back to the truck. They go 2 minutes per zone. They go back to the truck. They smoke a heater or they play a game. I don't do either. So I just grabbed it. I started walking and looking at it going, Mr. Anderson needs to understand that there's a leak. I never noticed that. There's a leak underneath that head. Compressed air and water bubbles up. So it gives you Superman vision for a moment. So I thought, I'm going to make note of that. And then I found a leak there. And then I found some leak under the drip line under 6 inches of mulch. Didn't know there was even a line there. So I started taking notes, told Mr. Anderson, I go, hey man, guess what? I've got 6 or 7 items I'll fix for you in the spring. I'll see you in the spring. He's like, that's great. Let's do it. Let's book it. And it just happened, appointment after appointment after appointment. And we still do that today. So you get a winterization
It's your main
audit,
CTA.
right? And it's a very simplistic guerrilla type of marketing, but it works. Now the proposals go out January 10th. They click receive. We have auto renew. Now we get them onto different packages, all that stuff, right? Seasonal packages, bookended. And it starts to become very formulaic. And it turned into our full system assessment, or SES, or a free inspection in the spring, where we look at 50 points of inspection. And it's the same thing. And it just walks the consumer through that in a very subject matter expert type way. And it's not a hard sell. It's just
trust.
Yeah, you got it. That's exactly it.
Trust. You're building trust.
You got it.
Authority. They're like, hey, we know what needs to be done. You're not going to do it. Here's what we got. If you want to ride along, let's go.
You got it.
Right? How do you guys, I want to get into your brand a little bit. How are you guys going about conserving brands? Are you guys using like rain barrels and things like that to, like, what is the Conserva aspect of your brand represent?
Yeah, it's awesome. So first off, everybody goes to the rain barrel thing, which makes great sense, but irrigation systems use
it's the only thing I know.
Yeah, they use so much water that we'd run through that rain barrel in a very, very short period of time, right? So while that can work for drip applications for other things, and we will see in the future, you're onto something, we will see cistern systems, right? The Netherlands utilizes these when we see them overseas, but we'll have gray water, we'll see reclaimed water, more so in those types of areas, right? And but in the interim, what we do is we look at it as triage. I first came into the industry, I thought, man, we're going to have this super high tech, we're going to use all these types of awesome things, and we do. But the reality at the end of the day is it doesn't make sense to deploy that type of tactic, smart controllers, weather stations and or hooked up to the internet, forward-looking weather patterns. And we'll talk more about that type of stuff. Soil moisture sensors. There's a bunch of great things, flow sensors. But it doesn't make sense to do any of that until you tighten up the system. So we think triage. Patient is up on the gurney, headed to the hospital. Arterial bleeding has to stop. There are across the U.S., man, millions and millions and millions of heads that are broken, leaking, gushing water, or industry wastes, right? 1.5 billion, with a B, 1.5 billion gallons of water every single day in the United States based on overwatering from irrigation systems. So we have to tighten up the system. Lateral line leaks, main line leaks, head leaks, broken fractures, things like that. Simple rain sensors, all that stuff. Let's get that in place, tighten up the system. Then we're going to deploy the next area, which is better design, right? Making for sure we have proper head-to-head coverage, match, precip, all those different types of things. And then we get into the fun things, smart controllers. Smart controllers that have 40 years worth of weather data looking backwards for your exact latitude and longitude, your exact address.
What?
We know
That's
we know
cool.
what to expect on weather normal. Now, it's not weather normal.
Yeah.
Right? So we know that things change. So then we have to be hooked up to the internet to know exactly what's happening. How much water is leaving the earth, right, in the form of what we call evapotranspiration, but it's ET. Water leaving the earth, evaporating or transpiring from plant material. We as irrigators, we got to replenish that. So how much do we need to apply exactly in your area? So then now we know the live weather. More importantly, now we know the forward-looking weather. If your system in Kansas City is supposed to water today, but you're getting a meaningful rainfall event in 24 to 48 hours, it'll say, let's abate it. Let's not do it today. Let's wait for the free rain. Once it's there, how much did we get? Recalculates the algorithm for what we need in the future. It did rain. I don't know if other people there are ever wrong. Ours are every time. But if it doesn't rain, it'll recalculate how do we catch up and how much do we have to catch up and when. So it's this awesome technology.
That is super cool. That's way better than the silly little rain sensor that I have that's not doing anything on my gutter.
You got it.
Because it doesn't work. Man, that is really cool. I didn't know, like, I'm familiar with precision farming, for example, because I have a rural real estate background that's really weird in the franchise space, believe it or not. So I remember like going in and learning about this precision farming aspect. And I was like, wow, this is really cool that technology is that you can, hook it up to a John Deere tractor, do whatever and get really microscopic, right? I did not know that it had trickled down to this consumer level of like, I guess it makes sense, right? Yep. That you could have a module that would allow these types of things to happen that frankly is probably going to save not only like I think about like solar installations. If you stay there long enough, 30 years, you'll make your money back. I think with something like this, you're probably making your money back a lot quicker. Yep. Plus, what are you doing? As a homeowner, you're going to feel better about just how you go about it. Because I don't know about you, but I feel like a disgusting, entitled American, right? Yeah. If I come home and the sprinkler's running or, there's something going on in my house, I'm like, this is so wasteful. Like, I'm very aware of how blessed we are as Americans. I have team members in Latin America, the Philippines. Yeah. Like, I get to see and hear about how life is in other places. So that's really cool because it gives that, we were talking about the warm hug feeling from franchise industry. You guys have a warm hug feeling of a service offering.
You got it. And you can
really cool.
How you make your money is important, right? Well, how much money you make, how you make your money, you can put your head on the pillow at night. And we tell the story all the time. We can look over again at the neighbors, the Andersons, let's say across the way, and we can teach our children. We can say, well, look, the Andersons probably aren't being very wise with their energy usage, right? And you can see, 2 levels or 3 levels on a walkout of the house. Outdoor lights are on, every light's on in the house, and you're like, yeah, you're not being very energy wise. And we can teach our kids that, we should be turning off the lights, all that type of stuff. Well, the reality at the end of the day, Kevin, is we generate electricity. Now, when the same Anderson family is watering their lawn during a rainstorm or just after a rainstorm or just before a rainstorm or simply too long and overwatering or during the daytime hours when it's blowing away or evaporating, we can also share that same story, but guess what? We don't generate water. It's our water.
Yeah.
It comes from the same source, right? These beautiful aquifers, this beautiful freshwater streams, lakes, and rivers. And there's only so much of it. Less than 1% of the Earth's fresh water is available for us, or all of the water is fresh and available for us to use. And what do? Similar feeling, makes me want to just vomit, is we're watering during the daytime, during the rainstorms, on the cars, on the streets, on the sidewalks, 1.5 billion gallons per day. And so we focus on our systems by tightening them up, and then by deploying some of the basic technologies, the smart technologies, is we save 40 to 60% of that water usage. So cut the water bill in half. And that's a big, big deal.
It's a big deal. And I'm super excited to see that you guys have one here in Kansas City, actually in my hometown of Oldham Park, which is awesome. Yeah. We have an irrigation system. It's been a source of frustration, for my wife, for myself. We've got this Hunter controller in the garage. It's just like, we know that it's highly inefficient. And so our default position is sometimes to not even hook it up sometimes. Yep. It's like, oh, it's winter. Eventually we'll hook it up. The yard starts getting burnt and brown. So I'm excited to become a customer of your guys', because we've never found somebody who reliably, like we always have to think about, hey, we got to do our backflow thing. We got to have somebody come winterize our system. Who do we call? We've never really found the guy, So it's cool that Conserva Irrigation of Kansas City can be our guy or guyette, whoever owns it. So that's really, really cool.
He's a phenomenal franchise owner, and he was our franchisee of the year last year, man. The guy killed it dead, and he's killing it dead. Awesome.
Well, I was going to say, he's in a great part. I mean, Johnson County, Kansas is a phenomenal market. There is a lot of growth. There's still a lot of dirt to go, and the household income in that area is really,
so let's go back on your comment. That comment you made, which is awesome, about answering the phone, showing up, and all that type of stuff. Now, that's our industry, right? Think of our market, right? We're introducing sophistication to a very unsophisticated market. And what I love most about the opportunity, right? We're a marketing company that happens to do some irrigation and a lot of irrigation, but we really are marketers, right? And champions of that. And so what we've developed is this protocol, which is, it justifies, it quantifies, it monetizes the experience for the consumer, right? Scalable, repeatable, all that good stuff. At the end of the day, who are we competing against? This was the best value prop is where lightning struck twice in my life. Number one was with Mosquito Squad, first to market, first of its kind in the industry. Second time here, first to market. So who are you ultimately competing against, right? The dude or dudette. Now there's some that are sophisticated, and that's awesome. And rising tides, we help that. But most maybe have a magnet on their truck, maybe, right? Answering the phone while they're digging in the dirt, right? And so our industry, the bar is so low to succeed. If you want to beat 90% of the people in our industry, answer the phone. Now I'm going to lower the bar a little bit more. Answer the phone relatively most of the time, right? And I want you to get all the time, but relatively most of the time, you'll still beat 90% of them. Be nice and smile relatively most of the time, and then show up on time relatively most of the time, right? And I'm saying we do all those on time and do it great, but even if you cut that in half, you're still beating 90%, right? And the last 10% is that dogfight. That's where we play ball. So it's an exciting, exciting place to play.
Yeah, it is. It is. I love how you just kind of fell into the franchising industry. It's much like me. One of the questions I always like asking people or having a conversation around, like, are you an accidental franchisor or is it intentional? And you were just you're like a lot of people, I think, which is, and for listeners, this is why we do what we do. This is why Russ and I are here. All of our guests are here. Like, once you get into this industry, first of all, it's full of really cool people. That's just like really cool because they're all entrepreneurs who've been successful and want to replicate their other thing and then help other entrepreneurs get what they want. By nature, that's a really cool person. That's somebody who's a coach, a giver, is successful. Like, it's just a lot of, it makes for an attractive person in your life. And then secondly, the business model. You guys hear me talk all the time. It's like everybody's rowing in the same direction. You used a great word. You said cooperation. I love going to these national conventions and looking out and being like, hey, everybody's rowing in the same direction. We're all on the same team. We're in different markets. We're going to sharpen each other's saws, or whatever the analogy is, right? We're going to be better together versus, and by the way, I know he doesn't listen. So one of the lawn guys, one of the irrigation guys, one of the many that we fired in our lives because they've destroyed our system and caused us to have to replace it and put in a new one, or don't even do this and answer the phone while they're digging the holes, right? Like that whole just understanding that you can take a very simple problem, a better way of doing it, and then rolling that out to other entrepreneurs, and then layer on top of the fact that you're doing some good stuff for the planet, man. I can see how you throw your head down on the pillow at night and things feel good.
Yeah, it's awesome.
It's a noble way to create a living and to create a business. So
awesome. That guy that doesn't answer the phone, we look at that and we started understanding the industry. Most people, right? Our industry is Hotel California, right? You can try to get out, you can try to check out any time. You can't ever leave it, right? People do. But you grow up. Yeah. You grow up in the industry and you kind of sort of stay in it. But then that's a very close-knit group, very close-minded group. So we just started thinking, what could we do different? Well, this is the first time in the history of our industry, we have a very old industry, that we're introducing brand new people with brand new ideas that have a ton of business acumen or a ton of work ethic or great culture, great attitude, great ideas. The first time ever they're being introduced to this industry. Why? Because there's a business model created in and around it, right? So now there's a way to get them into the industry to dominate, and that's what we're doing, right? Now Conserva is the largest irrigation provider in all of the U.S., and now we're right in the middle of our decade of dominance. That's our whole goal. We thought in 10 years we want to dominate, be number one, but we're number one already. And it's exciting. Now it's time to run up the score. And it's the first time that our industry's had that. We say it all the time. You go home, hey, honey, I'm going to get into irrigation. She'd be like, you've got a head injury, dude. What happened? Nobody would ever go into it on purpose, ever. Why would you? It doesn't make sense. Now, for a business opportunity,
go dig up people's yards.
Yeah, exactly. Right? I mean, coming home all sweaty, dirty. Now, no business opportunity, right? Now the answer is, how are we going to do it? Got a business system, got a business model, successful track record, tons of people, right, doing exceptionally well in this, and we want to be somebody. We want to be part of something bigger than ourselves. We want to get after this and create some wealth and do right by our neighbors, do right by our community, and it's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hell yes. And ultimately, I think it's all we ever want, particularly as entrepreneurs, because I just talk to other entrepreneurs all the time. I mean, that's who I serve, and I'm like, all we really want is to wake up with a hell yes, which means that what we've got in front of us that day, that week, that month is like it's not like or there's not like one foot's out the door. It's more like, yeah, man, like this is a mission worth dedicating the one life that we know of that we get on this planet to. Like, that's not a small thing. So I'm super happy that you found your we call that the Japanese concept, ikigai, right? Have you heard of that concept?
I haven't.
It's basically it's a fascinating concept, but it's basically like, if you could draw a Venn diagram and talk about the things that the world needs, the things that you're great at, the things that give you energy, and things actually people will pay for, right? And in the middle of that is other words for it are your zone of genius, your superpowers, whatever they are. Very few people actually ever land there. They don't ever land there. It's kind of like when you're there, it doesn't feel like work.
Right.
It's like, for me, people are like, hey, what do you do for a living? I'm like, I just move pixels around on computer screens, talk to amazing people, and help other people get what they want. And it does not feel like work. Like, yeah. Sure, there's some Mondays that you'll hit, hit snooze, but you're like, man, do I get to go do this today? There's some pain involved. But in the aggregate, we get to write our own story. And so I think that's what's also cool about franchising. I think that's what's cool about what you've done with your career. I'm a better person for having you in my life. So I appreciate you joining us today. This has been really, really cool getting to know you and furthermore getting to know the brand that you guys have built. If people want to learn more they want to connect, like what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, just go to irrigationfranchise.com, irrigationfranchise.com. Anything and everything about Conserva Irrigation right there. Plus, you can click right and learn more about our parent company, Empower Brands, that has 9 other brands, right? So 10 awesome brands. It's a great family. It's a great spot to land. And like you said, man, we just every single day. I wanted to create something, and it's a little bit cliche, but I didn't want to create something for everyone. I wanted to create, right, something that was everything for someone, right? And so it's getting to that spot that you're talking about going, that's it, man. I feel like I've landed at a great spot. And that's really what we've done.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Thanks again for taking time to visit with our listeners. I know that they appreciate it. I appreciate it. And so, yeah, enjoy your decade of dominance.
Attaboy. Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate it. We'll talk soon.
My pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate you listening. I know that you probably know somebody that would benefit from hearing Russ's story. So if you think about it, text this episode to your friend right now. Furthermore, the feedback loop we get, and the only feedback we get as to whether or not we should keep doing this, is reviews and likes on social and all those places. Until next time, I'm your host, Kevin Oldham. Have a phenomenal week and be well.